You're listening to Story Struck. I'm Rachel, an editor and writing coach.
And I'm Nino, a ghostwriter and book coach. Welcome to our curious community where we dive into everything books and writing.
Now, let's get into the episode.
Welcome to this week's episode of the Story Struck podcast. We're going to have a kind of fun conversation and a little bit of sharing today of some of our writing. And we're going to talk about the value of what we're kind of dubbing keeping your writer's sketchbook, which is using a kind of free form creative exercises as a way to warm up your creative muscles. And as we've talked about a lot, we tend to kind of overthink our writing. We get stuck on our writing. And we were kind of chatting about, a book that Nino's community is reading right now. And that kind of sparked this idea of how can we take this beyond just like an occasional writing prompt you might see online and, explore it and make it into an actual writing practice. Because this is all about writing practice today. So you want to kind of chat a bit about kind of our conversation that we've been having this week, Nino, about it?
Yeah, I think, when I think about like the writing practice, we talk a lot about writing ritual. And I think that this really fits very comfy in that writing ritual space. And on the other side of it, we have a warm up, right? If we were to, like, I came from a singing background or a music background, and doesn't matter what instrument you're playing, you always warm up, right? You always practice. Same thing with athletics. You always do a warm up before a game or before a practice, before you go and you hone your skills or you're preparing for something significant or serious, right? You always have that prep moment. But we don't do that as authors and writers very often. We tend to just go in and raw dog it. We need to this book that we're doing in the Story Weavers community for our book club is Wild Mind: Living the Writer's Life by Natalie Goldberg. She's the author of Writing Down the Bones, which I really love that book. Really helped me set a lot of the foundations for my book writing as a creative writer. But this one has a lot of great practice in it. And she talks about writing practice, and I really loved her perspective of it. And it kind of made me think about how we can integrate a writing practice with, like, how Julia Cameron talks about morning pages, where because I feel like with the idea of writing practice, we think a lot about like those journal prompts kind of thing, or those writing prompts that we see a lot in stores for things. And okay, now we're going to try writing in this. And it becomes very academic, a lot like homework, where if we were in an MFA program that we might get, okay, now we're going to practice writing something in this style or whatever. But I think with this kind of approach to it, with this open, free space without a lot of pressure to write something perfect and beautiful, allowing for the creative play while we are exercising our writing muscle, it helps us to then go into our writing work already set within the mindset and the flow of writing, honed into or helping us discover our author voice and move smoothly through this process while also developing and growing as writers.
Absolutely. That's so well put.
I was
'Cause you're just
really
like, man,
trying.
everything you look at, right? Everybody has to practice. Everyone has to do warm up. And I feel like as writers, we're so often feeling the crunch that every word we write has to be going towards the book we're writing, or it's wasted time. It's wasted words. Like, all right, I got to get in the zone, but maybe sometimes you're not in the zone. And like, as we all learn, the more we write, the better we get. Just like over time, not just general in your rewrites. Like, we just have to practice it. It's a muscle that has to be practiced, and it's going to come easier. Each book that you do, your writing is going to improve. Like, if you look even at your favorite authors who've written multiple books, I'm pretty sure you're going to see a lot of differences from the first book they wrote to, the 10th book that they wrote. So taking this approach sounds so much more fun, and I feel like we're going to be less precious with our words. And I know for me, as someone who's a perfectionist, like, I have like my book idea. I'm tackling some short story right now, and even for the short story, I'm still plotting the whole thing out, and I haven't actually written stuff yet for it. Like, I have my outline and I know what's going to go in, but that's different from me actually writing the prose of the story. So we're like, all right, what if we can do this? And what if we keep this as like a sketchbook? Because we were first like, oh, writing journal. And then we're like, sketchbook sounds more disposable. It's more fun, more playful. And I mean, you could do this any way you want. You could have it on a Word document. You could handwrite it. So I think we both got little journals. So like, this is
Mm-hmm.
my
This was,
little one. I don't even want to call it my journal.
yep,
This is my sketchbook.
yep.
And I decided that everything that's in here is just fun. If I don't like it, I can take a Sharpie marker and I could literally black it out if I wanted to. This is for no one's eyes except for mine, unless I want to share it with someone. This is not where I'm editing work. This is just the fun place where whatever idea pops in my mind can go, whether it's a sentence or a paragraph or 5 pages of something. This is just the creative play space. And we've both experimented with it this week, and we both had a lot of fun with it. So, Nino, do you want to talk about the inspiration you had and share what you created?
Yeah. So I was just having a conversation with my friend Vivian about our ancestors and where we come from and how we find the magic practices from our ancestors and tapping into, just having this whole like, discussion. And it made me think about my grandmother. And so like the conversation of my grandmother came up because she's Italian and she used to love to cook. And then I dove into my writing practice in my little writer's sketchbook that I just bought, which is just a journal with a bunch of plants on it, but isn't it lovely? And I had my grandmother on my mind, and this is what came out. I just did one page within 10 minutes, and this is what I got. She was outspoken in a way only a grandmother could be. Despite knowing her recipes, no one could make her gravy like she could. Her little dose of magic in every bite. 5 foot nothing, but enough sass to put anyone to shame. Grandma, get off your soapbox, we would tell her at the dinner table. Shit, I once said at 3 or 4 years old. Where did you learn that word? My parents asked me. From Mama, I would say. The woman had no filter and her face came with subtitles. She always wanted to be a writer. Journalism was a dream she forfeit for the sake of 2 kids and a military husband. She was the person who made me fall in love with poetry. My dyslexic ass was struggling to read and understand Emily Dickinson. She was the one who read it to me. As we stood at her kitchen counter, the altar of her craft, she read me the foundation of what would become mine. So much of who I am is because of that woman. My world became a little darker when she passed. Now I honor her with every word I write, with every curse word I say, and every time I feed someone with my own magic imbued dish. And when my work is published for all to read, it will be dedicated to her for being the seed of my becoming. So that
That's
was
so
what
beautiful.
I wrote. Well, and the thing that I noticed in doing this writing practice is that initially I just started with like a little moment of reminiscing, just thinking about my grandma, the little like highlights from my life with her. And then it moved into the deeper stuff. Then it moved into more of what my voice is. And that's where I feel like I uncovered more of my voice just like naturally came through, and it felt like I could feel it viscerally in my body when I was writing it. And I think that's kind of part of the warm up aspect of it, where initially starting off, it was pretty simple, pretty straightforward, just like some memories. But then it got into the deeper good stuff, that nitty-gritty stuff, the heart of it. And that is what then I can move into as I'm writing something that I take more seriously, right? This is the play, this is the warm up. That is the serious stuff. So now after writing this, I'm ready to move into my book or short story or whatnot. You want to share
And I
yours?
think what's really neat to think is for both of us, what we did in our creative play right now is completely different from what we're writing in our books. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're both have fantasy, and yours has all of this rich mythology in it. Like, there is so much happening. It is totally not the story of your grandma. It's not, that creative nonfiction. It's not memoir. It is this epic fantasy within this mythological realm. And I think that's something, right? Like, then you're not as worried about the words being perfect. You
Yeah.
are just getting them down. And I think that's the other great part about doing this analog is you're not seeing the autocorrect pop up. You can't necessarily go back and fix something. It's just down and it's there. And if it freaks you out, write it in pencil instead of a pen. Whatever you
Yeah.
want to do, right? Like just make it yours. And if you do like to do art, maybe you do a combination of like an art sketchbook with your writing and you kind of do some doodles or drawing with it or put some paint and write over paint. I don't know. Whatever floats your boat for it, as long as you're getting some words down.
Yeah, I think that that's like the part too is like allowing it to be a creative play, right?
Yes.
If you have one of those books that you can do like watercolor in, like you write a bunch of stuff and then you just do a bunch of watercolor on top of it. So just like it's it's to it's to create a space where play is allowed, because play is not something that we naturally fall into as adults, and we make everything serious. And that extra pressure of seriousness, of the importance of it, stops that creative flow. And that's what
Yes.
we need to hone in on in order to write those really powerful pieces and to find our voice. That was like that feel like it's such a big thing, is to like really find your voice.
Yeah, I think that's really important to chat about before we bounce over to mine because we talked about that before we even started recording of finding your voice. Because like when you read that, to me, I was like, oh, that is you. That is Nino's voice. And you were saying how you really felt that that was your voice and that you had captured your voice in earlier parts of your book. And now as you're going and doing editing in later parts, you feel like your voice isn't quite there. So I think
Yeah.
this is a great exploration for being able to say, oh, this feels like me. And all right, so now if this feels like you and that later chapter doesn't, start working on why does that not feel like
Right,
you?
because like,
Like,
when I was writing my book, it was about getting down the bones, right? It was about,
hmm
"Nope, I'm chucking away, I'm getting the story down," and I was writing every single morning, which I am not a morning person, but that was the time that I could dedicate to it, and so I was writing every single morning before my son got up for school, and it was very early, and so my brain wasn't in it yet. I was just writing down the bones. So it's very just basic and straightforward. And as I'm going through the editing process of it, it's like it's not pretty. It doesn't sound pretty because I'm in developmental and I'm not in line editing. And I feel like in line editing, I'm just like gonna really hone in and make those sentences more lyrical. And with where I'm at now, it's not, and it's really starting to bother me. I keep stopping myself from line editing because I'm like, this isn't my voice. But with this practice, I'm noticing that the more I am doing this, the more that natural voice is just coming right out. And I think as I move to the second book of the series with this writing practice, I'm going to go directly into my writing and not have to come back and polish and imbue my writing with my writing voice in line editing. It will just come naturally in the first draft that I can then just judge.
Exactly, because your brain to get into that space. So you're doing that warm up, you're getting your brain in there, and then you're able to bounce into that work already warmed up, just like an athlete, just like an artist. Like your muscles are already primed now, creatively and mentally. Like it's all there, ready to go. So yeah, this is super fun. And after I share mine, we'll talk about some other ways you can incorporate this into like maybe current work that you're working on too. So for mine, I am writing some really dark stuff right now. And I have like this weird dichotomy of like, I like to write really dark stuff, but I'm also really drawn to like the really cute, cozy stuff. I don't know how that meshes. Well, my journal is kind of my creative play for my cozy side. And I had this idea a long time ago about what if a therapist was hired by hell? And they essentially are going to be a therapist for all kinds of supernatural creatures, but they are a human. And so I shared that idea with Nino, and then I think you were sharing it with your friend Viv, and she's like, "Oh my God, I would love it if it was like animals." And so that idea's been in my head too, because originally, like my cozy mystery that I was going to write, she was going to be able to communicate with animals, and I was like, "What a beautiful combination!" And so that idea has just been like tickling in the back of my head. And this morning when I woke up, I was just thinking about this squirrel that I saw. It's winter now, but it was in fall. And this big squirrel was on this log and he was just chewing apart the shell of a black walnut. So we have a bunch of them on the property. And there were just black walnut shells all over the stump, all over the ground, like a mound of them. And I was like, oh my God, he's a hoarder and his wife is pissed. So then I'm like, okay, like what if, the therapist was out there sitting outside and she sees these two squirrels like yelling at each other. Squirrels make their noise, but she actually understands it. So she's sitting there and she's like, oh my God, I could like see her like pinching the brow, like Wanda and Rodney are at it again. Like, let's sit down and have a session, you guys. So this is incredibly raw. I literally just wrote this in several minutes before we popped on, so I have not edited it. I have not done anything to it. It is in the rawest, FAFO draft that it could possibly be, but that is what the creative play is for. So I'm going to be very vulnerable and I'm going to share this like I've done nothing. I've just spit it out in my brain as I saw it.
You can do it,
So
Virgo.
it's very short of what I have so far. When you're a therapist in a small town, it's hard to drink your coffee in peace. Everyone seems to think your ear is theirs to borrow 24/7. Wanda and Randy were no exception. And as I'm reading this to you right now, there are so many freaking typos and like things because I did this on my free write instead of in my notebook, and I'm like, it's like killing me, but like they're there and I'm breathing and it's okay.
Breathe. It's
All
okay.
right.
It's okay. We can't see the grammatical mistakes.
Right? I'm like, oh God, like theirs is not spelled THEORS. Like, Jesus, woman, you're an editor. But you know what? That is why, like, I would do this in my free write or I would do it handwritten because I can't go back and fix anything. It just is what it is, and it exists on the page. All right, so sorry, my tangent. All right, so Wanda and Randy were no exception. Katerina pinched the bridge of her nose and set her now lukewarm chai latte on the ground. Wanda, slow down. Slow? Slow? That's what I keep telling Randy. Wanda's tail flicked like it'd been stuck in an electric socket. Randy pawed at his face, pushing Wanda's tail aside. Hun, all I wanted to do was get us ready for winter. All? Yeah, all is the apt word for it, Randy. Wanda twisted her tail one more time, smacking Randy off balance. Why don't we back up here? Katerina smoothed the folds of her skirt and picked back up her tea. I'm hearing that Randy was trying to get some food packed away for winter, and this is really upsetting you, Wendy. Darn tootin' it is. This red-hair fool borrowed... Jesus, I can't even read what I wrote. This red-hair fool has 20 burros packed to the gills, and he thinks it's necessary to run over to McMillan's and grab just one more black walnut. Wendy beat her tail down on the tree stump. Randy sat upright, eyes wide, looking left and right. Well, it was a big one. Was it now? Wanda's glare could have cracked a nut. Guess what's not so big anymore? Your tail, doofus. Katerina choked on her latte, coughing several times. Excuse me? And that's where I stopped. So, right, like it's very raw. There are typos, like it's not there. It's not a polished, pretty piece. This is just in the moment. I wrote it down. I haven't touched it, but I got words on the page. It got my mind thinking, and now I can picture where the story is going. And I could leave it just as that. It exists. It's on the page. I had fun. I got to play with voice. I'm feeling in this creative mood. And so now I'm ready to go and either do other writing or just say, wrote today. And I did something,
Right.
and that could be it. That could be it.
Right.
I never have to touch this piece. I don't have to do anything after this. It was just a creative practice for me.
And that's the thing with this kind of practice, is you're now in this energy of creative play, of, you're warmed up and ready for writing, right? Because you've gotten the kinks out now and you stretched out your writing muscle a bit, right? And now you're ready to go into it. Maybe this whole thing becomes a short story series that you end up doing and developing. You've got the bones down. They're
Yes.
a little messy, but the goodness is there. The heart is there, right? You've got the comedy, you've got the characters, and you
Yeah.
played around with it in order to exercise it. I think that that's the thing. Whenever you find that flow state in writing, it's a very calm, very like joyful, open space in my experience. And this kind of practice puts you into that energy that you can then use in your stuff. And I think it'll make your other more serious writing just that much better from the jump because of it. But I
Absolutely.
just
And I
love
think,
that. It's so
oh,
fucking
thank you.
cute.
And I can just see, like, in my mind, I still picture, like, what we're going to go on after this. Of, someone's going to walk by and see her talking to these little chitter-chatting squirrels on the park bench and be like, wow, our therapist is a little crazy. I'm not seeing her. I'm going across town to see, Bob Jones over there. But, like, as I like reread through that, I could see, oh, I really, I'm doing a lot of stuff with the tails. What else could I do with squirrels? Like, there's things I know that I can tweak for next time, but that wasn't the point of the exercise, right? The point of the exercise is just to get it out. And as you were talking about the flow state, I was in the flow the whole time. Like, I was still in bed in my pajamas, and I'm like, I'm going to practice this right now. I'm going to do it. And I was just going, going, going. And then looked at time. I was like, shit, I got to start getting ready because we have our podcast. So, I just didn't even realize that the time went by. I just did it and I just wrote whatever popped into my head, no matter how weird or stupid. And that's how I got like, your tail's not big anymore. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, what is wrong with me? I don't know, but that's what the squirrel wanted to say. So, like, who knows where we're going
Right.
from here? I think Randy got his tail run over as he was going to get his big nut. And now she's upset because he has a little scrawny tail. So we shall see. But
Yeah,
right,
and
that's the point, is having fun.
that's what my experience with a lot of writing is. It's like just falling into this creative play and flow state in order to just discover what's there, right? You're exploring and you're channeling this story through you. I always feel like it is writing from the heart and not writing from the mind, because it's coming through in my experience whenever I feel it. I feel everything coming from my body. I don't feel it coming from a logical place in my mind. And that's how a lot of my poetry has come to be. And that led into my other creative writing work. And that's what I try and that's a big facet of my coaching, of my community, how I try and guide people, because that's my unique brand of writing, is this more intuitive writing. And actually, stuff on the flow state and overcoming overthinking with intuitive writing, I have a workshop coming up, so stay tuned for that. I have some information for the writer summit coming up soon. Just wanted to plug that in. But so this practice feels so good and so natural to me. I'm like, this is what I need to be doing. Like this is my creative joy, is having this creative play and warming up in this way, because I feel like, so as a singer, we do these warm-ups and it's just like la 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 la, super basic, super boring. Always hated it, right? Always hated it. Understand the reason we do it. I get it, but I always hated it. And so I would warm up before I went to my vocal practice or whatever I was doing. I would warm up in the car with just simple songs and progressively get more difficult as I go, because I needed it to be more interesting. And I feel like this kind of practice is like that. Whereas if we go to Barnes and Noble and we get like a writing prompt journal that exists out there, it's more of along those lines of those structured, like we're doing la 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 by looking at, this person's type of writing and trying to do the same thing, or having this writing prompt about write about a time when dot dot dot, and instead finding that place where you can warm up in a more free and open and intuitive space. And I think that kind of like sounds like what you discovered through doing this, is that free formed, just intuitive space of writing, and just discovering, just from a sudden idea to three fully developed characters, you know?
Right? Yeah. And the like fun part of it was that I didn't put all of that thought into plotting and planning because I knew this is only living here. This is small. This is not going to be a thing. So I'm not overthinking, oh, well, what would my character, be thinking with like the mythology I developed back for them for this and this and this and this. Like it's more self-contained. And it just was really great to get into that flow state with it and just be creative for a moment. Also to get a break from the heavier stuff of doing the plotting. And I think as well, once I get into the writing, of getting a break from having to think, 20 chapters back and, 10 chapters forward. Like, where is this going? How is this connecting? Like, oh my God,
Yeah.
just give my brain a moment, right? Just breathe
Hmm.
for a second. And then we were talking about like maybe you have sketchbooks for different types of things. Right? Like if you go to the art store, you have like mixed media, you have a watercolor one, you have a marker one. Like there's all different types of sketchbooks for the type of project you're working on, the types of tools you're using. So why wouldn't we have this for ourselves as writers? So like now I have my like dedicated for fun writer's sketchbook, but I also want to start one that is for like my actual project I'm writing. So maybe I want to explore the dialogue of a scene or, just a couple paragraphs. How would this sound like if my character said it this way? Or what might it look like if I did more description versus less dialogue? And I can have that live just on a few pages in my book sketchbook, right? Whatever I want to call it. Then that's that space that I'm not feeling like I have to delete and redo and all of this stuff. I can just play in that book. I can play with that character. I can even ask that character questions, whatever I want to do in that book. And it just lives off the computer, off the page. It's its own separate little thing. And same thing, no one has to see that. I can scratch it out, or that may spark a cool idea for me to change something or come back to later.
Yeah. And so we're actually really trying to hone in on this idea. So I would love if we have some of our listeners kind of try and practice this. Give us your feedback. Fine. Tell us how these things work for you, what works, what doesn't, things like that. In my Story Weavers community next month in March, which I don't know when this episode's coming out, in March, we're going to do a challenge based on this whole practice and in creating our writer's sketchbook and things like that. And through all of these different ways that we're going to get feedback and we're practicing it ourselves, Rachel and I are going to develop designated writer's sketchbooks for all of the listeners, all of our viewers. So you have something that has some of this information and maybe a little guidance as needed for your writing practice that you do in helping you develop as a writer, helping you find your writer voice. So, yeah, I don't know, it just popped in my head, so I don't want to share it.
No, I think that's great. Yeah, definitely want to know, you know, what about these ideas find helpful? Try it out. What went good? What were the hangups for you? Like, what would be helpful for you to know? So, like, when we create this, like, maybe is it helpful if we put examples for you? Are you a person who wants to see an example on the page? Do you want like a supporting little video, like something we're doing here of like us sharing and talking about our process? All of those things would be absolutely great for us to know so we can create a sketchbook for writers that just, you just feel so excited and free and you can't wait to go pick it up for yourself.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think it'll be great, especially once we start doing writing retreats, that we'll
Hmm.
have something to pass out because we're really playing with a lot of these ideas and how we can create the most beneficial thing for writers in order to find that flow state that they can then go into this like structured place afterwards through the flow state. Because, as I think you all listeners have figured out by now, she is structure, I am flow. So together we we make a complete author. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this impromptu episode. We were not planning this at all. Just kind of said, oh, why don't we just do this? And so we did, and here we are, and here it is. So please share your comments, thoughts, email us, comment on whatever platform you are listening slash watching this on. Join our challenge in the Story Weavers community, which will be linked. And even just like send us some of your stuff that we would love to read it.
Yes, raw is welcome. I shared my raw stuff with you today. Return the favor, share something with me. I don't care if it has typos, if it has tail thumping a million times like I did in my sample, like just send it to us. I would love
Make
to
Rachel
read
feel
it and
better.
chat with you. Yes, make me feel better for sharing something I literally wrote minutes ago. And that
This was
reading of
like
you to
so
you guys was the first
outside
time reading it
Rachel's
again.
comfort zone. I can't even tell you like how far outside. I'm proud of you, Rachel, for getting so
Thank
far
you.
outside your comfort zone and sharing something
I
so
know,
raw.
like, ooh, that was tough, but thank you,
You did
everybody.
amazing.
Don't tear
It
me
was
apart in
wonderful.
comments.
If you do, I will stick my cat on you. So be nice. Alrighty.
Thank you for listening. Check out the show notes for details and links from the episode. And don't forget to subscribe and follow for more. Special thanks to our composer, Micah Silverstein. Enjoy the rest of the music.